I would like to inform you about specific of the information hybrid war from Russia against Ukraine. And this war was began in 1991 after Ukrainian independence. And this starting from the first half of the 19th century, information product were deliberately introduced to the Ukraine market with the aim to discredit the European and American culture heritage, which indeed with the removal of Eastern European and American information product from the national market. The next operation indeed with the replacement of the information and cultural market with Russian-made products. Second stage of the anti-Ukrainian information war, there was an extensive distribution of information product which was supposed to change the way of thinking and ensure the replacement of European values with Russian ones. Such product contained propaganda or alcoholism, corruption, etc., etc. And third stage, we observe a change of emphasis in the conduct of the information war, which was aimed at the destruction of inter-religious and inter-ethnic harmony and tolerance in Ukraine, destabilization of public life, and the formation of the social tension. And however, even the measure and voice of society did not find adequate support in state bodies and the media business. And this result very stronger for you. And fourth stage of the information war since November 2013 found its manifestation in the large-scale distribution of information products that justify and promote enlargement of the territorial integrity and constitutional system of Ukraine, and after that, supporting for the military attack against Ukraine. Maybe it will be useful for you, this knowledge, because for Ukraine, as finish of this war was tragedy of the mass attack after February 2022. And my question, I would like to comment, it's very important, very interesting, every presentation. But I have only one question to the Mr. Himmler about possibility to buy these military weapons from by different enterprise or government without decision of the parliament or government or chancellor of Germany. Is no? What is chance to take this decision? Agree with these authorities in Germany. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. This was not a topic of my lecture, but I try to answer. It's a little bit difficult because we have, and now I always looking for the English translation. We have a Kriegswaffenkontrollgesetz, that is a law to control the delivery to Germany and abroad to other countries of war weapons. This is not a pistol 9mm. This is not a war weapon, but a tank Leopard 2 and a Taurus is a war weapon. So, and this is always controlled by the federal government, and I think it's the Federal Security and Defense Council, Nationaler Sicherheitsrat. So you cannot buy even an anti-tank mine, you cannot buy a bazooka if they do not agree to that. They have general lines, for example. Generally, it's allowed to export bazookas to Ukraine. Generally, it's allowed to sell 155 millimeter ammunition for Panzerhaubitze 2000, our armored artillery, propelled artillery, which we gave to you. But it's not generally allowed, for example, for rockets or cruise missiles with a very high range. So I'm not the nearest friend, I can say, of Olaf Scholz, but it's his decision. This is our constitution. And in Germany, the chancellor has, I'm standing to that what I say. In Germany, the chancellor has a so-called leading competence, the leading role in the government. So he overrules decisions or advices of his ministers. Sorry, but it's not my opinion. It was only an answer.
Maybe just a comment on the comment. So if Russian information war started in 1991, I didn't have time in my presentation to speak more about artificial intelligence and information warfare. So now I have a minute. So the scope of information warfare and the pace and the spectrum can increase by a lot when these systems will be more applied to information warfare, when artificial intelligence will be applied more. Like we have seen, you have seen, especially young people, certain deepfake videos appearing lately, you know, portraying President Putin saying something which was not said, Zelensky saying something which was not said, and other leaders which was not said. Imagine that this happens, now, this is now just, we are now in more testing period of that. Imagine that this happens by magnitude of 1,000 of such fake videos per week. So that our governments will spend a lot of energy just for proving and defending that this was not true. And all this, so one is deepfake, second is false information, disinformation, all these narratives and will create bigger mess. Already right now we see, especially a little bit older people see that this world is traveling something, you know, we have gone to some level which is not good anymore. Some values are not firm anymore. And this is going just to increase this kind of uncertainty, which is of course the purpose of the people who are waging information war, is to create uncertainty in your enemy's environment. Societal uncertainty, uncertainty about the government, corruption is everywhere, leaders are not to be trusted, economy is failing, immigrants are going to come and eat us all, you know, for the dinner and things like that. So it's just think of larger magnitude of this and think that our resources will have to be spent for defending against that. And think that this is strategically planted strategy. This is planted strategy of the opponent. So the question will also be, what is the truth? You know, are Ukrainians progressing on the front? Are they not progressing? Are Russian? What are the number of casualties? Already now it's difficult to say how many people really died, you know. Are the Palestinians telling the truth? Is Netanyahu telling the truth? Is PR spokesperson of the military telling the truth? So at the end, the theory interestingly approached this, we call about post-truth world, which is like constructivist approach to that. Post-truth world is the world where we don't know what exactly is truth. The truth is what we believe is truth. That's the truth. And that's important, not the facts, but important what we believe. So this is a very dangerous stage we are entering right now, very difficult for politicians, very difficult for soldiers, and also very difficult for academics, because as we have seen in the COVID time, academics were not trusted anymore. They were just some guys who were talking some nonsense, because there are now other guys who have PhD from Facebook and Google who who have more followers and they are more influential than one guy with some PhD from, I don't know, University of Miskolc. I'm sorry, I'm borrowing your university. So he's just one guy who has an opinion, on that. It's not an expert anymore. So it's a very difficult place we are entering right now, and we cannot really do much about it. I'm sorry. Right now I'm pessimistically concluding this, but of course we can do something, but it's going to take a lot of resources. This is a playground for intelligence services. This is like dream for intelligence services, this kind of future. And for fake and corrupted politicians as well. And for non-experts, Google doctor, Google PhD people.
So just briefly, according to the Colonel Istok, I think that it's necessary to build awareness among the citizens and among the young generation mainly, because we are witness to what happened after the 1990s when the Ukraine rised and achieved the independence. So like the Poland, yes, and from the communism. So we were witness of the time. The young generations just have the influence of the deepfakes, disinformations, and so when they will have the awareness of that situation, so then we can build resiliences and concern with the disinformation and the war information. I think that's also the main task and topic for the Ukrainians, especially for the PR, that the governments should focus on the good PR to send the good information, because we also meet the disinformation not only from the Russian side, but also from the Ukrainian side. And we also experience it in Poland at the time. So because we are close to the Ukraine and so with the brotherhoods, and so we are supporting also you very closely, as you know. So I think that's important, just the building of the awareness, as I mentioned. So I think that the Colonel will agree with me.
So, excuse me, it's possible to answer for your message, because
I know, and I hope. Yeah, I was just in that kind of modus that I didn't.
Yeah, is it possible to some of that's for comments? Because I would like answer only one point. What Ukrainian territory is territory of the attacks. Ukrainian refugees go to the Europe, etc., etc. And thankfully for Poland, was the first stage at Polish society. 6 or 7 million people from Ukraine refused to the Poland, and after that, next Western country. It is comments for young people and other Europeans. Thank you. Sorry for this comment.
Okay, that question to Professor Molnar. What about the relationship between the EU and NATO? So some commentators say that actually without NATO, we could not imagine the EU, because whenever EU member states start thinking about their security without the intervention or the protective umbrella of the US, at that moment we will be in trouble. We will start bickering with each other. We will have problems with each other. So what is your perspective on that? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Relationship between the European Union and NATO has been very controversial since the beginning. When the whole process started the discussions about creating CSDP during the 90s, it ended with the so-called with an agreement, Berlin-Prague agreement. That was the so-called agreement between the two organizations, which said that the European Union for crisis management can use assets of the NATO. But after 2004, that doesn't work. Why? Because Cyprus joined the European Union, and the conflict between Turkey and Cyprus, and somehow also Greece, became part of the European Union as well. So it's very controversial on one hand. And it was a little bit the relationship kind of frozen until 2016. And in that case also, the Russian aggression in Ukraine was a game changer. And since 2016, the relationship between the two organizations became much better during this period. And now, and also that is the period when the discussions about strategic autonomy started of the European Union. But today it is more said that that NATO is mainly for territorial defense, European Union for crisis management. So those had different roles. NATO is purely military, European Union had a comprehensive approach for crisis management, and also, which is important, today it is said that the European Union could become the European pillar of NATO. And that is very interesting because the strategic compass was accepted in 2022, and every year there is a review of that. And the last document, a review of the strategic compass, is saying this, that the European Union could be the European pillar of NATO. So now this could be, and it was very interesting as well when, during the Trump administration, the relationship between the European Union and the US worsened in a certain way. The relationship between EU and NATO was getting much better and was strengthened after that. And today is much better than it was before. It's very strange because most of the members are members of the European Union and the NATO as well, but due to the Cyprus question and conflict, this relationship in a certain way is still controversial.
I would be interested on your opinion on what hit the news yesterday, these protective tariffs imposed on Chinese electronic vehicles imported to the EU. Do you see the electronic car industry in the EU as a crucial industry, crucial in the sense as you mentioned it in your presentation?
This is again part of an interesting discussion where competition law mixes into national security and so on and so forth. But this is actually the measure done by the EU. I know that there has been an investigation that was launched under the foreign subsidies regulation of the EU. So it's a competition law matter. And they launched this investigation. But this is a sort of a preliminary assessment. Based on a preliminary assessment, the EU thought it would be fine to impose tariffs. Now, I haven't read I saw the headline in the news. I haven't read what the decision is exactly based on, but I'm guessing it's that because the investigation is not done yet. But it's sort of odd that this comes just a few weeks after the US imposed a 100% tariff on electric vehicles. So I'm not into conspiracy theories too much, but there seems to be an interesting coordination, let's say, on that. Just like there is an interesting coordination between the expansion of the CFIUS and the adoption of investment screening in the EU, and also some activities of certain governmentally organized, non-governmental organizations that are pushing similar legislation outside the EU, also within the EU in some member states. So there are a lot of things that are going on, and it seems to be a mixture of both. But for electric vehicles, it is a competition law matter. Now, if it can be a security matter, in the US, there was a narrative that was pushed recently that these electric vehicles actually collect data on people. So for this reason, it's a national security threat, and they should be forbidden completely. But they also chose to go the route of competition issues, saying that It's actually about how China illegally subsidizes or overly subsidizes the production of these vehicles in such a way that it distorts the market. So, thank you.
Because Grzegorz likes answer questions, so I have one. So yesterday, the Polish government implemented one regulation regarding the border zone. As you know, the Polish-Belarusian border at the time is treated as the tactical and also the critical infrastructure. There we see threats against the Polish soldiers, against the Polish police and guard police officers. So we had the accident where one soldier were killed. Yesterday were the funeral. So the question is, what do you think about that regulations? Is appropriate way, and in that in a way we secure the Polish-Belarusian border. So as we know that the threats coming not only from the immigrations but also from the Belarusian services.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, you have it true. Yesterday was signed a special act. The Minister of Internal Affairs and Administration signed yesterday a special regulation of and the introduction and a temporary ban on staying in a specific area between Polish and Belarusian border. The regulation on the creation of the special buffer zone and the Polish and Belarusian border provides for an introduction of a non-stay zone of 60 kilometers. At approximately 44 kilometers, it's wide by 20 meters, and 16 kilometers, approximately 2 kilometers. In my opinion, it is a very good solution. Because it is enhancing of border security. You have a true that in Polish border, I don't know who murdered our officer, our soldier, and Yes, especially since we currently have a very difficult situation in the border related to the attacks on our officers on the border. We don't know who attacks. Maybe migrants, maybe Belarusian special services, we don't know. Polish government set up a special, how to say, yes. Thank you.
One question. The introduction or the implementation of IFF systems, identify friend foe, to AI, couldn't that solve some of the problems on the battlefield, so that in minimum our own armament is not destroyed? Is that yet done?
No, it's in experimental phase.
Okay.
So we will wait until this AI is more developed. So we don't want that this AI falsely recognize our equipment and destroys it, and vice versa. So it could solve a lot of problems, but in 1 or 2 decades, perhaps. I don't know if it was the answer to your question. Okay, thank you.
Right. Question for the last presenter. Have you looked at explainable AI? Explainable AI. Okay. Have you looked at this topic?
Yes, but these military systems are not dealing with explainable AI, as I'm informed. There are always some kind of fog. They don't really tell you all parameters that they are dealing with, all features or all patterns they are searching for. So it is not explainable AI, would you agree? Authors and users of these systems know what they are looking for and know why they are using AI and what is inside this box. For the rest of us, for the entire world, it is a black box. So they know what parameters they are using. It's only a few parameters that we know about. The rest of the world, they know, but they don't tell. In Israel, Israeli forces are now using AI to identify terrorists, and they say they identify 100 targets per day. 100. I mean, if they achieve fairly good rate of successfulness, like 90%, it still means that one of the 10, in the 10 cases, they are wrong. And 10 people are being attacked or killed unnecessarily. We don't know what's behind this Hapsora AI or something like this. For us, it is a black box. Okay.
To Attila, well, thank you all for great presentations, but first to Attila. ICBM's problem of ICBM. How do you comment the last event in the space when Houthis, supposedly Houthis, or somebody from Yemen has sent an ICBM on Israel as a sign of retaliation for what Israelis did with Iran. And somebody, supposedly the United States, shot down this in the outer space. So some people said that this is the first act of space war with concrete evidence. And supposedly this was shot down more than 100 kilometers above the surface. So that's just how does this fit in your presentation? And secondly, to Marco, yeah, I completely agree. So AI Act is leaving out national security. There is some hope in. There is some hope. You have shown some hope for future regulation of this, but this regulation seems to be always. It will be post event. Are there any hopes for some preventive regulative events, preventive regulations in this, or we'll have to wait for the bad things to happen at such a level that everybody will be so pissed off that something will be done here? So that's for you, and then for Kaya. Yeah, this is bizarre. This again, AI Act. So leaving out national security, but kind of bringing in back the law enforcement, which is also national security. So I don't know, it kind of seems bizarre, like you also referred to this. This is maybe just a comment. Yeah.
Okay, so I will start. Ballistic missile defense was for a long time a very controversial topic during the Cold War because it was seen as an enabler for an attack. Because during the Cold War, the mutually assured destruction principle was prevalent. That is, if you launch, for example, the Soviet Union launches an ICBM attack on the US will detect it and launches a counterstrike. Because these missiles, without an ABM system, cannot be stopped, the Soviet Union will be just as dead as the US. And it was seen as a mitigating effect on the international situation. Therefore, but if you have an ABM system, then you can launch your first strike from behind your ABM system and take out the counter strike. Therefore, you will not be punished. That's why they have seen the ABM systems as a destabilizing effect. And that's why there was the ABM treaty to kind of outlaw ABM system development during the Cold War, and only between the US and the Soviet Union. Now the ABM treaty is not effective anymore, and it was never binding to other parties. Today, we see ABM systems as contributors to peace and stability because we can defend our countries against strikes. But ABM is seen now as a legitimate tool of self-defense. And if we follow the functionalist approach and the US understanding of it, that means ICBMs are not space vehicles because military activities are not space activities. Even in this case, if an ICBM reaches the volume commonly understood as outer space, they are still not space activities, then we cannot call it as a space war. Anyway, there are many instances of first space wars, like the first space cyber war, the Russian attack on Viasat. That was also interpreted as a first space cyber war. It was not the first, it was not in space, yes, it was cyber. So this is kind of a similar case. I can accept the interpretation that this was the first instance when an anti-ballistic missile system was used to stop a military strike and not used as in a test. There were many ABM tests before, even conducted in outer space, and ABM systems were repurposed to shoot down satellites during tests. But in my understanding, we should not call it as the first space strike just before it happened in outer space, because the weapon systems were not space systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isaac, for the question. So I fully agree with you that when it comes to the use of AI and the regulation, there is currently no functioning solution on the international level. But as I was explaining in my presentation, when it comes to the actual use of these systems by the nation states, then one of the conditions for the compliance with international human rights legal regime is the existence of adequate legal grounds and legal basis for the use in the national legislation. And actually, the lack of rules on the national level will, by default, trigger the violation of the international human rights law. And therefore, I think that the states will be required to develop some solutions on the national level. To what extent will, in the future, harmonization will happen on the international level, we can wait to see. I'm not very optimistic about this because I think that the countries are not overly ready to externalize their activities in the national security domain to the international bodies, but we will see whether something might be happening here in the future.
So I will just shortly comment, and I double-check the recital 24 of AI Act is saying exactly about law enforcement, and I would invite you maybe to see what exactly is being understood as national security, law enforcement, and public security purposes, because AI Act is covering law enforcement in its totality and public security as well, but not national security. So those are three terms that EU law is apparently distinguishing somehow. I don't know how. Thanks God, I am focused on military.
One branch intelligence, one branch civil protection, okay, and one branch law enforcement. There is no other.
Yeah, but this is your domestic national view.
No.
And EU law?
No.
Is it EU law definition of national security?
This is theoretical. This is theoretical, conceptual understanding of national security.
Yeah.
If you put
But
out,
the law, EU
if
law
you
has
put
its own
police
definitions.
out of national security, you're putting one of the pillars of national security. So this is why I say it's kind of bizarre. It's a bizarre thing. Use of AI for national security is use for police purposes by definition. No.
Sorry, I also have to disagree on this point, and I'm with Kaya on this one. It is well established also by the European Court of Human Rights and also within the European Union, when the states are investigating criminal offenses and when they are applying criminal procedural legislation, this is fully within the scope of the EU legislation, and it cannot fall under the exceptions of the national security. We might characterize this as one of the national security activities on the policy level and also on the theoretical level, but from the legal perspective, the distinction is clear there. So that is, those activities will never be characterized as national security activities.
Okay, so looks to me like some lawyers not understanding what national security is has kidnapped this and take it out from the national. Okay, let's say it differently. We have narrow understanding of national security, narrow, and then we have broader understanding of national security. In the broader understanding, also environmental activities can be discussed under the security, terms. But okay, I understand if this is the practice, but I'm very surprised because this would be like saying that police has nothing to do with security. National security is a matter of intelligence, military, and police services. There is no other interpretation of that, except that maybe in the legal practice, some people are detaching the national security and saying, okay, this is military, this is defense, and this is intelligence. But the police is something like broader, but it's conceptually this is wrong. This is wrong.
I agree with you, and I would admit that there are some areas where national security and police matters would overlap. So for instance, if we are dealing with an attack on critical information infrastructure, it might be a national security issue, but it can also be a criminal offense under the legislation. Therefore, they would be overlapping. But to say that any police activity would by definition fall within the national security would be, I think, overextending the notion of national security. So for instance, when police is investigating a murder, that is very serious indeed, but I wouldn't classify that as national security. And actually the legal framework under which authorities operate will be different, at least in my countries. So when we are operating in the domain of national security, it is a specific piece of legislation which comes with some conditions and safeguards, let's say for interception of content. When we are operating in the context of national security, in the context of law enforcement, completely different legal regime would apply. So
maybe I will just try to wrap it up because I think we don't have a disagreement. I think that this is just the issue of EU law, and maybe you remember all that once it was said that the tomato is a fruit or a cucumber is a fruit, just for purposes of EU law. So probably somehow it has to be used in this way, and this is that's that. Thank you.
I will try to bring it very shortly. What is a key aspect, in your opinion, to counterattack or to defend against the Chinese danger of, I say it in company law, hostile takeover of AI?
The question, I think, has two parts. One of them is, of course, that how do we defend against the Chinese companies obtaining technology that would allow them to develop a domestic competitor to the best AI systems that, for example, the US has developed. And I think that there the answer is simply export restrictions. Restrictions on chip manufacturing, restrictions on semiconductors. That's one part. The second part, of course, is know-how. And for that, the European Union has already taken the measure of enacting a regulation, actually, that forces member states to screen certain types of investments and to share information. So I think that for the second part, for this hostile takeover, what can be said is that investment screening will probably result in some sort of defense. However, the problem with investment screening is, of course, layered companies. Companies built on companies and so on, where you can't or can very difficult or can identify the true beneficiary only in a very difficult process. So that would have to be dealt with, and probably these types of layered or nested companies would have to be made a lot more transparent in order to avoid such a hostile takeover.